Good morning, everybody. You're watching our mid-morning edition of Arirang News on this Wednesday, August 5th, coming to you live from our studio in Seoul. I'm Shin Se-min. Before we begin, these are the stories we're following at the top of the hour. The torrential rain isn't letting up. Another round of heavy downpours expected today, mostly in central parts of South Korea and in capital Seoul. The country is reviewing the possibility of designating hardest-hit regions as special disaster zones. A massive explosion rocks Lebanon's capital, Beirut, killing at least 78 and injuring thousands more. Lebanon's PM blames over 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate that was stored in a warehouse, but President Trump says it might have been an attack. Eye for an eye. China says it'll retaliate Chinese journalists if China are kicked out of the U.S. due to their visa expiration. The White House, on the other hand, is adamant it'll take action in the coming days on Chinese video message app TikTok. Our leading story this morning, a massive blast in the Lebanese capital of Beirut that sparked an enormous mushroom cloud has killed scores and injured thousands of people. The explosion transformed the city's port area into a wasteland, leveling buildings and cars. U.S. President Donald Trump, on the other hand, has offered assistance to Lebanon, but says it might have been an attack of some sort. Our Ji-young has our top story.
A huge explosion at a port in central Beirut rocked Lebanon's capital on Tuesday evening local time, killing at least 78 people. According to Lebanon's health minister, more than 4,000 people were injured and the death toll is expected to rise. Followed by a huge mushroom cloud, the explosion emitted powerful shockwaves across the city, destroying buildings and shattering windows in different parts of Beirut. The Lebanese prime minister said those responsible will pay the price for the incident, as it's unacceptable that a shipment of ammonium nitrate of around 2,750 tons has been present for 6 years in the warehouse without preventive measures.
What happened today won't pass without account. Those responsible will pay the price for what happened. This is a promise to the martyrs and to the wounded. This is a national commitment. Facts will be revealed about this dangerous warehouse that has been there since 2014.
The Lebanese president has decided to release $66 million for emergency use from the 2020 budget. Meanwhile, President Trump offered his sympathy and help to the people of Lebanon and referred to the incident as a terrible attack after talking to U.S. generals.
This was not some kind of a manufacturing explosion type of event. This was seems to be, according to them, they would know better than I would, but they seem to think it was a attack. It was a bomb of some kind, yes.
The incident comes amid an economic crisis in the country and in advance to Friday's trial of the long-awaited verdict over the 2005 killing of the country's ex-prime minister. Ji-young, Arirang News.
China is vowing to retaliate against the United States if Washington persists with its, quote, hostile actions against Chinese journalists who may be forced to leave the country in the coming days if their visas are not extended. Our Lee Seung-jae tells us more.
In the latest clash between the world's two superpowers, Beijing on Tuesday vowed to retaliate against Washington if Chinese journalists are forced to leave the U.S. as their visas near expiration. Speaking to reporters, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin said no Chinese journalists in the U.S. have been granted visa extensions since May 11th, when Washington limited their stay to 90 days with an option to extend. Such actions he calls hypocrisy.
On the one hand, the U.S. flaunts itself on freedom of press, while on the other hand, it obstructs the Chinese media from doing their job in the U.S. This exposes the hypocrisy of the so-called freedom of press in the U.S. This is completely double standards and hegemonic bullying.
It's unknown how many Chinese journalists could be affected or what retaliation China might consider. However, according to the editor of China's Global Times, U.S. journalists based in Hong Kong would be among those targeted should Chinese journalists be forced to leave the U.S. Whatever the Chinese response may be, Wang says they will not stay quiet.
If the U.S. keeps going its own way and makes even more mistakes, China will be forced to take necessary and justified responses and resolutely safeguard its own legitimate rights and interests.
Beijing has also urged Washington to refrain from urging the video sharing platform TikTok to be sold to an American corporation, warning not to open Pandora's box, as the U.S. could fall victim to similar circumstances. However, despite such warnings, the White House says it will take action in coming days on TikTok and other Chinese apps. Microsoft is currently negotiating a deal to acquire the Chinese app with a 45-day deadline imposed by President Trump. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And staying with that story, the United States and China have agreed to take high-level talks next week amid deteriorating bilateral ties over various issues. The Wall Street Journal reports that U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer is expected to meet his Chinese counterpart Liu He online on August 15th to assess Beijing's compliance with their Phase 1 trade deal, which was signed back in January. Beijing had made a commitment to buy around $200 billion worth of American goods over the 2 years, and the talks come amid U.S.-China ties souring over various issues, including the COVID-19 outbreak and Hong Kong. Numerous reports are claiming that North Korea is continuing to pursue nuclear weapons and has likely developed miniaturized nuclear devices posing a threat to other countries. Our Kim Jae-hee reports.
Various reports suggest that North Korea is continuing to enhance its ICBM capabilities and has developed miniaturized nuclear devices that can fit on the warheads of its ballistic missiles. The commander of U.S. Strategic Command said on Tuesday that North Korea is continuing to develop nuclear weapons and missile systems. Speaking at the Virtual Space and Missile Defense Symposium, Admiral Charles Richards stressed that the regime's illicit pursuit of nuclear weapons and its ICBM tests over the last few years pose a threat to the U.S. His remarks come one day after Reuters, citing a confidential UN report, said that several countries believe Pyongyang has developed mini-nukes that can be mounted on ballistic missiles. According to the UN report submitted to the UN Security Council North Korea Sanctions Committee on Monday, North Korea's past 6 nuclear tests had likely helped in developing miniaturized nuclear devices. It also said that one country, which wasn't named, claimed that the regime may seek to further develop miniaturization to potentially develop multiple warhead systems. Following the news, South Korea's Defense Ministry pointed to its 2018 Defense White Paper and confirmed that North Korea appeared to have developed miniaturized nuclear devices to a considerable level, adding that it has been monitoring the regime closely with the U.S. Reports regarding the issue were pouring out last month as well. The U.S. Congressional Research Service said in a report in July that there's evidence to suggest North Korea has achieved a level of miniaturization that allows nuclear devices to be mounted on both short-range ballistic missiles and intercontinental ballistic missiles. Japan also said in its Defense White Paper last month that North Korea appears to have the capability to launch an attack against Japan with a nuclear warhead. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
South Korea is mulling over the possibility of designating central regions as special disaster zones. If named, regions like Chungcheongbuk-do, Gyeonggi-do, and Chungcheongnam-do provinces will be receiving state funding for damage control. Here's Prime Minister Chung Se-kyun earlier this morning.
I'm calling on related ministries to come up with restoration countermeasures with the consideration of the climatic environment as soon as this downpour comes to an end.
Damage from the torrential downpours in South Korea's central region and capital Seoul this week has so far left 15 dead and 11 others missing as of Tuesday. The Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasure Headquarters says more than 1,000 people were forced to leave their homes over the past 5 days alone. With sporadic heavy rain continuing, many low-lying bridges and roadways in capital region and the surrounding areas are still closed for both pedestrians and drivers, and trains are not running on 6 railway lines. And it's not much different story up in the northern part of the peninsula. North Korea has also issued flood alerts along 3 of its western rivers as the regime is battered by heavy downpours. The regime's state-run Korean Central News Agency reported this morning that the water levels near Taedong River is likely to exceed warning levels this week as more rainfall is expected in that region. Taedong River that runs through capital Pyongyang has seen devastating fatalities due to the heavy rain back in 2007, even resulting a postponement of second inter-Korean summit by 2 months. Earlier, the regime's news agency reported Tuesday that the flood alerts issued near Taedong River, Cheongcheon River, and Yeseong River will last through this Thursday and Friday. The World Health Organization is calling for caution over Russia's plans to begin mass production of COVID-19 vaccines as early as next month. The WHO says compliance to guidance for developing safe and effective vaccines is a must. Our Kim Hyo-sun with more.
The WHO has reportedly urged Russia to abide by the established guidelines for the development of safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines after the country announced plans to begin mass production as early as September. A spokesperson for the WHO stressed during a briefing Tuesday that all vaccine candidates must go through a full range of testing before they can be rolled out. He also explained that the international body has not yet received an official notification of the vaccine candidates under development by Moscow, adding that if there was anything official, the WHO's European office in Denmark would look into it. The WHO has published an overview of all the COVID-19 candidate vaccines, which lists 26 in clinical evaluation. Russia's news agency TASS earlier reported that there are 2 vaccines being developed by Russian scientists, stating that one completed phase 1 of clinical trials in mid-July, while the other commenced phase 1 in late June. During the same briefing, the WHO spokesperson noted that its team of experts dispatched to China to probe the origins of COVID-19 has received updates on epidemiological studies, biological and genetic analyses, and animal health research. He said there were, quote, extensive discussions between the WHO team and scientists in Wuhan, the city where the virus was first detected. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
The head of the UN is warning that the COVID-19 pandemic has created the largest disruption to education in history, and the prolonged school shutdowns could further waste untold human potential and exacerbate entrenched inequalities. Outlining bold steps for education in the face of the pandemic, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called Tuesday for greater investment as low and mid-income countries already faced an annual funding gap of $1.5 trillion prior to the pandemic. He also added that the world needs to invest in digital literacy and infrastructure and draw upon flexible delivery methods and digital technologies while ensuring sustained support for teachers and communities. And following its latest measures aimed at cooling the overheated property market here in the nation, the Korean government has vowed to speed up redevelopment projects for public sector institutions as planned. In the first housing market-related ministerial meeting on Wednesday, Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi highlighted any activities or attempts of market speculation will not be acceptable. Hong also pledged to come up with additional measures following the latest housing rules, including supplying more homes in the capital region. Now, the government plans to hold such meetings regularly to closely monitor the market situation.
Good morning. A monsoon front that's staying over North Korea has been slamming the northern parts of Gangwon-do province, and rain has also restarted in the capital region about an hour ago. So central western regions are looking at possibly up to 400 millimeters of downpours into Friday. Other regions could also see heavy rain during the day and into tomorrow because Typhoon Hagupit that dissipated near Shanghai in China, but it will still impact South Korea, bringing strong winds and a massive amount of rainfall to central regions. So a heavy rain warning remains in place across the nation's central parts, while a strong wind advisory could also be issued. So we'll have to be particularly careful of stormy weather for the next couple of days. And what's more, the central parts of South Korea is on high alert for landslides, and the Korea Forest Service has issued a landslide watch across central parts of the country, so let's all stay alert. Quickly checking on today's temperatures, there's scorching weather in the south, and Daegu and Gyeongju will be blistering hot at 34 and 33 degrees Celsius respectively this afternoon, with heat wave alerts remain in place. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
And that's our time for the hour. As always, thank you for watching, and goodbye for now.